Welcome back. We're going to explore the forecast functionality in this video. What are the goals? The goals are the purpose of the forecast line, where the forecast line is set up, and how to update the forecast line. So the forecast line gives us the ability to track the original budget and what it was for that specific task. So a lot of the times the sales group has an initial budget that they gave the customer. We want to be able to track that as we start adding actuals and as we start adding planning lines to be able to make sure that we don't have job overages and overruns. We have the ability to adjust the forecast if we need ongoing, and we have the ability to update the forecast line as items are added throughout the project. Now I will say that last option there, the ability to update the forecast line, is available only if you have the premium subscription. But the ability to add the forecast line and update it on an ongoing basis, that would be available using the basic subscription. So setup. Where do we set up the forecast line, and how does Business Central know that this is a forecast line? So let's jump into the application here. I'm in a job card. I've got this material import line. I would see here that I don't have a budget right now, so I don't have any costs associated to this line. So if I come in here and I add the BOM planning line, so I've got some lines here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to indicate new. And here what I've done is I've created a generic item and I've just called it estimate. So I'm never going to post this line. I really don't intend to interact with it a whole lot, but what I'm using it for is a placeholder just to be able to mark what the forecast was that I was given to originally. So I'm going to scroll over, and in the quantity field I'm going to indicate 1 because this is one forecast. And if I scroll over, I can mark this line as being a forecast line. And it jumped over. So I'm going to mark that line as being a forecast line, and I can indicate my forecast amount. So maybe here I want to indicate that for this specific task, I was given an original budget or forecast of $25,000. And because I've indicated that it's a forecast line, the system knows that I'm not going to ever post or interact with it. And when I close out of my BOM planning lines now, I can see that my total forecast amount for that task has updated the 25,000, and in my end total for that task section I can see that it's adding any forecast that I have for previous lines as well. In the newest release of this, we've given the ability to add additional forecast lines. So if I go again into my BOM planning, if I'm given an additional amount in my budget, I could add another estimate line. Again, I can indicate 1. I might want to put a description on the line that indicates here that this is additional forecast that might have been added to the budget through a change order or a later date. But I'm going to indicate another 10,000. And I'm also going to mark that as a forecast line. So again, I can scroll over here and maybe I want to update this to additional budget based on forecast. Here, I could call this original forecast. So again, that's a new feature, the ability to add 2 budget lines. We've added to the latest release. And if I close out here, I can now see that my forecast amount for that line has increased from 25,000 to 35,000. So on an ongoing basis, again, if you have the premium subscription, you would have the ability to update the forecast line using a function. So it always keeps that original baseline. So as you start adding additional planning lines for items that you truly need and bill of material components that you truly need, those will have their own unit cost. And over time, that's going to increase that planning line's budget to be greater than, obviously, your original forecast. So we've given the ability that if the forecast line was set to be, say, 25,000, and you add additional items, let's say they total up to be 1,000, it will automatically decrease your original forecast line to $24,000 based on the new planning lines that were added, so that it always brings it back to that original budget amount that we had set up. What does that look like? So as we can see here, I've got a task line for my material import. I don't have a budget total cost because the budget lines that I have for the items don't have a unit cost. So I'm going to go into Manage, into my BOM planning lines. And for my lines that are not a estimate line, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to add a little bit of unit cost information just for the sake of adding some values. I won't do all the lines just to kind of see here. But once you've added some unit cost, I can see here that we've got a budget total cost here that started to accumulate based on my forecast. So based on that, I'm actually already in trouble. So let's just go ahead and I'm going to actually show you guys how you can increase your forecast if you need to. So again, the idea that if that forecast has to change, if it was entered incorrectly, I can go in and I can make changes to that line later. So maybe I put 25,000 here and I had actually meant to write 250,000. So I can see here my total forecast amount has automatically updated. So that is great. So if I need to manage, go back into my BOM planning lines. If I want to see what's remaining in my forecast or what's left on my forecast line, under the Actions, Procurement, I can indicate to update the forecast. So now if I scroll over, I can see that my forecast line has updated to 49,984. And the reason for that is because if I scroll over, I can see my original 10,000 and 250,000. So my original forecast was 260,000. But if I look at my unit cost, I take my total of my additional lines that have been added. So I look at the quantity times the unit cost. I come up with my amount, and then it minuses the 260,000 by that value. So if I scroll over, so I can see sort of my extended costs here. So if using our calculator, we would be able to see $4 plus $12 plus 150,000 plus 60,000 is 210,016. So if we minus 260, we can see that the 49,984 is what we have remaining from our original budget. So again, this is a really nice added feature to be able to indicate where are we in terms of what we originally thought we would be, and then again, keep our eye on those overruns, go over budget. Any questions? Just reach out using the contact information provided here.